to the show, Mitesh.
Thanks very much, AJ, for having me on.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people, a lot of fathers across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about fatherhood, presence, and much more around this. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, your story, so that the audience knows
Sure.
who they are listening to.
No problems. Well, I think my story has really come from one or two key moments in fatherhood. I currently have a 8-year-old son and a 6-year-old girl. But the core moment, there's probably two moments, one for each child, that really made me wake up. I had almost missed my children's childhood, and not in a dramatic way. I didn't leave. I didn't work overseas. I wasn't absent in any way that would show in a photograph. I was there every morning, every evening. I was in the room, but I wasn't present. And there's a lot of conversation in modern times about being present and being in the present time. And I think you can be there in the room, but not really be there. And for years, I moved through fatherhood, a man underwater. I was going through the motions, performing the role really. So I was checking the boxes, right? So bath time, bedtime, school drop off, is the homework done? But my mind was somewhere else. It was on work. It was on stress. It was a phone in the hand. And it was my son that first said it to me that started the journey. He was 6 years old and he was on the dinner table, playing some Lego. I didn't really know what he was doing, and that was part of the problem. And I had my phone in my hand, just scrolling Instagram. And he looked up to me and said, "You're always on your phone, Dad." And he was right, and that broke something open in me. He had seen me more clearly than I'd seen myself. And I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a parenting expert, but that was one moment that really broke me open, and I realized I had to do something different. I couldn't just be there in the room, but not be there actually mentally with him. My mind was not there. It was thinking about work, it was thinking about all the stress I had on, and I wasn't actually there, present and intentional with him.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mitesh. So I want to understand from you, what is it that impacted you so much, and you started, taking steps afterwards, after your, son shared about your busy schedule being on the phone. A lot of other people, also other dads across the world, they also get to hear about all this from the children. What is it that was different in your case, and how is it that people, fathers especially, they can evaluate the same lines, perhaps several, and change their lives or understand it in the better context?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, many of us are, working around the clock, and technology is doing that, right? We all know we're feeling like we're very time poor, we're very stressed. I felt like that moment, and there was another moment with my daughter. I was going through the bedtime routine with her, and I was, doing the normal things. So brush your teeth, change to your pajamas, go to the bathroom, let's read a book or two or cut it short. And I was sort of almost looking forward to that routine to be over. Lie down in the bed with her, she's almost falling asleep, and then she falls asleep. And I have this feeling of relief almost, right? And there was one night where she said to me, "Stop rushing me." And that was an enormous sense of guilt. And I sort of woke up from that, sort of realizing, what are we doing as parents here? We're not actually physically there with our kids. We want our kids to be, well, I do at least, kids to be the best they can be, give them every opportunity, give them all the love that we want to give them. And I think we really try, but often we can't be there in the room because our nervous system is not allowing us to be there. We're sort of tight chest, we're, stress in the back, we're thinking about other things. So I had to really do a lot of searching into my own body first, and to recognize that actually I was not regulated, my body. I couldn't actually relax myself. And I think a lot of dads are like this. They're always thinking about something else, perhaps mums as well, where their mind's racing away, and actually need some tools and techniques to relax that down. So if you think about human history, right? We all came from sort of hunter-gatherer times, where you've all heard the story about a lion sort of chases you, or there's a threat of a lion or some sort of animal. You run away from that threat, so the nervous system activates on that, and you move from safe and secure, right, to survival, right? You're going to fight or flee, that sort of situation. And then you can completely shut down as well your nervous system, right, if it becomes too overwhelming. So we don't have the line anymore, but we have emails, we have bosses, we have deadlines, we have text messages, we have a constant stream that takes up that attention in our body, and we never bring that back down to a regulated state. So we're always in survival mode, almost in shutdown mode. At least I was. Every other day I felt like I was either just surviving the day or shut down, or sometimes even planning my day. You know, I'd go through work in the lunch and afternoon and almost be looking forward to that evening where I can just sit down on the couch and do nothing. And it sounds really shameful and sad when you think about it, and you just want to go through your day so you can decompress. So I think it's been a journey to recognize that, you know, I don't want to do day after day after day, because our kids mirror our regulation. Our kids are modeling our behavior. And I wanted to be a better father for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, how did you start making that change in that whole thing that was happening at, before that point in time? And secondly, it's a reality of today's world, even for fathers, that it's a difficult world to keep a job, to keep on performing on the job, and
Mm-hmm.
and be just there, even in terms of providing what they could provide in today's time. And it's not a easy life outside house, and they feel bad about you also not being present the way they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they learn about all the good things or read about all the good things of how wonderful a dad you can be or should be, the fact of the life is everyone will still continue to struggle for bread and butter. How did you fight
Mm-hmm.
back for the time and being present? And how can dads with limitations still, come to that level of doing still a bit better, and be much more present, looking from both sides of where each dad is standing? Help us understand from that point
Yeah.
of view, Mitesh.
Yeah, look, Ajay, you raised a lot of good points. You know, today, fathers probably have to work twice as hard, as do mothers as well. I think we have to recognize we're living in a time where most households, at least in Western society, and I'm sure in many parts of India, where both parents need to work, or at least one's working part-time and the other one's working full-time, trying to earn an income to raise a family, right? And you want to give your kids every opportunity. So we don't have the luxury of potentially just having a dedicated parent looking after our kids, or the extended family and village. Sometimes, maybe we do, but not from at least the experiences I've seen here in Australia and a lot of Western society. And I think many parts of India, I think your audience would relate. So I think, look, I did a lot of reflection. I've been sort of journaling for the last 5 years or so, on and off. I've been joining men's groups to understand, how do you manage your career, your relationship with your partner, your kids, your fitness, your social aspect. And I don't think there's an easy answer to that, right? I think it all comes down to, what do you prioritize with your time? I heard a stat today that said the average Australian father spends 34 minutes of time with their kids every single day, all right? And that's probably not too different to other countries, I would think, with the demands of work, demands of our lives. And I want to increase that time. If that is the average time, I don't want it to just be 30 minutes a day. I want it to be quality time. So I think the first thing I say to dads is, when you show up, you want to really show up. And there are certain things you can do around that. So, with post-COVID, many people are working from home, right? So it's a hybrid environment. So let me just talk about that first. Myself included, I work from home largely. When you transition from work to home, it could literally be the same room or it could be the next room, right? So we need to tell our body we're transitioning, right? So one of the things I've done is to tell myself, I'm home now, right? I'm out of work mode. Let me show up, right? I will go upstairs. I'll change my clothes out of work to home clothes. I'll wash my face with water. I'm telling my nervous system, I'm not in work mode anymore. I'm now here to turn up as a dad, right? And you've probably heard, and I'm sure your listeners have heard, the dad that comes home, pulls into the driveway, spends 2 or 3 minutes in the car. That can really help, right? Just resetting, thinking about what you're going to be like inside the house with your kids. You're trying to forget that work, or having that transition time if you're traveling on a train or a bus or car ride home, really thinking about what you're going to do when you get home and how you're going to add value to your family, how you're going to make the most of every moment. So, walking through the door and again saying, I'm home now, let me show up, or something similar, which tells your body that I'm now home. So it's not easy, but I think we can build these sort of routines to transition ourselves, at least to get in the room. And it's not always going to be right. It's going to go wrong sometimes. You're going to get angry. You're going to lose your temper. And that's where we need to learn other techniques to recognize those things.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mitesh. Let's understand it in the backdrop of your, calm framework. Help us understand
Yes.
about that, and also about your upcoming. Let's bring your book here. Upcoming book that is getting released in a couple of months. Fight or Father. Help us understand in that background.
Yeah, sure. I think, whenever you have a situation with your kids, right? So I'm going to think about my kids. I have to get them off to school. They need to put on their shoes. Like there's a lot of things they've got to do in the morning. They've got to get themselves dressed. There's breakfast and you're helping them out there. And you're sort of watching the clock and you're sort of saying, we quickly need to get in the car. We need to go to school, right? Or we need to walk to school. I often need to tell them multiple times. I'm sure many parents can relate. They're ignoring you. It's the fourth time you're yelling at them. Your face goes red. You clench your fists, right? You can't obviously get physical with kids, or at least we try not to, right? These days, we don't get physical with our kids. We feel angry, but I think often we don't know what is underneath that anger. And I think we, at least men, go straight to anger because anger is power. Anger is, forceful and feels like something we can control. But often anger is at the tip of the iceberg, right? What's underneath that is maybe we're feeling hurt that we didn't get to spend time with our kids, right? Maybe there's a bit of exhaustion in our body because we didn't sleep that well. Maybe we're feeling invisible because they're not listening to us, right? So we, I think, weren't really taught how to label the emotions underneath anger. So the first thing we do is get angry, right? We don't actually sit with that emotion and go, what am I really feeling? So the calm framework has really come out of how do we respond rather than react to those situations, right? When our kids are not doing something, we want them to do something, we want to connect with them, we're not connecting. So the calm is really, it's an acronym I sort of came up with, not to really sound clever, but it sort of worked from what I was sort of experiencing myself. So to get myself ready in those sort of situations, firstly, I need to clear my body, right? So what does that mean? Breath work. It means you've done your exercise and you've relaxed your body that morning. So often I'm getting up at 5 a.m. I talk about it in the book. That was the time that worked for me. But you're sort of clearing that body of the stress. You're taking care of your nervous system and you're relaxing that before you even face your family in the morning, breakfast time, getting ready for school, right? So the first thing is the C in the calm framework, clear the body. The next thing is anchor at the door, right? So we want to transition in the right way. So particularly after work, if you think about that example I just said, whether you're working from home or you're in the car, you need a routine. Splash water on your face, do 10 push-ups, go change your clothes, say to yourself, you're now home. You're anchoring yourself at the door before you move from one mode, work mode, to home mode, right? So that's anchoring. And then leading with calm as the L, which is really being peaceful, being calm, being regulated in your sort of voice and tone, because kids co-regulate with us, right? So if we are tense and we're getting angry and shouting, and we're saying to one child, don't shout at your brother or sister, and we're shouting, well, we're just doing and teaching them exactly what we're telling them not to do. So we need to lead with that calm nature. And the last one is model and repair. So, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to get it wrong. And that's when we need to own what we got wrong. And I think often we have maybe too much pride in actually too much pride to actually admit to our mistakes, right? Maybe saying something like, I shouldn't have shouted at you. I was stressed. I haven't slept much today. And I just really wanted to spend some time with you in the car on the way to school, right? And I didn't get to do that because, we weren't on time, right? So I'm sorry I did that. Not saying something like, because you weren't doing this, putting your shoes on, I got really angry, right? So it's a different frame. So we want to model that right behavior when we get it wrong.
Absolutely, absolutely. And talking about your upcoming book, Fight or Father, who is it with for? Is it only for fathers, or is it also for your partners, the
Yeah.
your better half? Or how does that work?
Look, I absolutely think it's for fathers and for partners, right? It could be your wife or girlfriend, whoever it may be, your partner as well. Because I think often, as you know, I'm sure Ajay and many men probably listening, we don't really talk a lot, right? And I think today's day and age, we bottle up things more than ever. We replace friends with social media. We don't go down to the bar or the pub as much. So we need a crew of dads or like-minded people in going through our phase of life that we can talk to, that we can relate to, where we can share stories and learn off each other. So one of the things I did was I started a running group here locally around my area, and I invited some dads. I was talking at school pickup around potentially going running. Some of them said, yeah, I've been meaning to do that as well. And we started with 2 or 3 people. That grew to 4 or 5. That grew to 7 or 8. We sort of have 10 or a dozen or so that sort of come on a regular basis every week. And running sort of clears that nervous system, right? And it's also a social aspect where we can talk about ourselves yelling at our kids or something didn't go the way we wanted. And there's no judgment in that. Often the group is saying things like, yeah, me too, right? So they're relating where we're getting all that sort of stress and emotions out rather than letting it bottle up. So the book is really about a journey of just not myself, but I've also sort of interviewed dads from the running group and friends that are going through a similar phase of life. Really anyone with kids under 12, because I think the first 10 or 12 years are pretty critical years of our kids' lives, where we want to be showing up, we want to be present, we want to be intentional, and we don't want to be in that sort of fight mode all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mitesh. One last question to understand your thoughts on this. You talk about, about men that we are expected to earn and be emotionally available, to grind and be gentle. No one talks about how to hold both. Do you think in today's time, much more is being expected of father men than what they can actually do, and that is putting a lot of unnecessary stress on that? And not only in one country but many places we get to hear about pressure on men. And or is it that men are actually coming towards much more, covering the distance that they did not in so many years? How would you like to explain this? More pressure or trying to reach where they should have reached before?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think there is absolutely, modern fatherhood has a lot of expectations. So, if we think about, I don't know, just our father's generation, right? I think, I'm an Indian background as well. My family's from Fiji, where we get an Indian background from Gujarat. And I think at least in our culture, and probably that just the generation before us, is, the man's primary job or his deepest sort of obligation was to earn, right? To earn money, to build, to secure, to work long hours, to show sacrifice. And that sacrifice meant love to the family, right? You sacrificed it. You wanted to get a better life for your family. And love looked like, having your own house, maybe renting a place, or having your house of your own and having a mortgage and having a fridge full, enough food for everyone, and a future funded, right? Maybe education for your kids. And that's a pretty powerful story. It has deep roots in human history. We know that. Male identity's been shaped around provision and protection. And that wiring doesn't really disappear today. It just becomes an underlying voice that we need to do more, earn more, be more, right? And the world keeps reinforcing it, right? So what I mean by that is we get to a certain level in our jobs, we get to a certain level of title, status, follows that achievement we have, respect follows the success. You know, the man getting the promotion, closing the deal, building the business, he's getting admired, but the dad who's potentially coming home on time, teaching his kids about vulnerability, being present with them, playing with them, he's not necessarily getting all the accolades, right? Because we don't have measures for that necessarily. We don't have measures like we do at work to what we do at home. So work might have sales, we might have leads, we might have profit, right? We have engagement scores with customers. We don't necessarily have the same KPIs at home. And I think men, what they tend to do is to chase what's rewarded, right? So we get rewarded at work, we pour ourselves into it, we put all this effort in, and then by the end of the day, we may not have much left for the family, right? And we often don't have those measures or goals set up. So I often encourage, I do this myself, I encourage sort of friends as well, is what are your goals for your son? What are your goals for your daughter? What are the KPIs and measures you're going to have and actions you're going to have to get to those goals? Have you actually shared your goals with your son or daughter? Have you done the same with your partner, right? So if we manage a team or we have employees, we can't be expected for employees to meet certain goals and KPIs if we haven't actually shown them what they are and what the steps are to get there, right? So we can't evaluate on that. And I think in a similar way, we want to develop our relationships at home. We need to sort of build those goals together. So I think that's one aspect I'd encourage everyone to think about is what are your strategies and goals at home, and what are your steps and actions, and particularly measures you're going to track to get yourself there.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mitesh. There is so much to learn about all this, and I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of fathers across the globe would want to connect with you and learn more from you, your thoughts, and also learn from your upcoming book. What's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, look, you can go to the website, which is fightofather.com. If you just put your details in there, I'll send you the introduction and first 2 chapters, and you'll get notified when the book is live. So I think, I hope you've enjoyed some of the conversation today and something has struck with you. There's a lot more that I can send your way.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.